Asus TUF or Asus ROG, which one should you choose? These two laptops are almost the same. Both of them have Intel Core i7-13650HX processors along with NVIDIA RTX 4060, but there is a little difference in the cooling. And both of them has the same screen and almost the same body quality. So, why ROG is more expensive? Let's talk about that. Let's start with the body and chassis design. Asus ROG over here has almost the same materials compared to Asus TUF on the right. Both of them has plastic shell and aluminum lid, but the plastic shell on the ROG is a lot better compared to Asus TUF, and you can easily feel it when you touch the laptop and when you hold the laptop and the plastic shell. And for this side, I think we should say Asus ROG is a lot better in terms of body quality and materials. I should test the hinge too. And as you can see, the hinge is almost the same, but the feel on the Asus ROG is a little more premium, which is fair because it costs more money to build this laptop and it is more expensive. For the keyboard, I can say both of them has good keyboards, and this keyboard on this model of Asus ROG is almost the same as this Asus TUF F16 here. Why? Because this keyboard is 4-zone RGB and there is better options with pair key RGB keyboard. That pair key RGB feels better, it has better switches, and overall it feels better when you are typing with the keyboard. But Asus TUF only comes with this keyboard, and because of that, overall I can say the keyboard on the ROG is better. But for these exact models, Asus TUF has a better keyboard. Why? Because it's a full-sized keyboard. It has numpad, and because of that, I think we should give the keyboard a score to Asus TUF. As for the trackpad, Asus ROG has a better trackpad. It feels better, it has better coating on it, and overall I can say it feels better. But Asus TUF doesn't lag behind a lot, and I can say it's a good trackpad. But in terms of design, Asus TUF has a tough typography in it, and I really don't like it personally. But at the end, it is not personal. Asus ROG has a better trackpad. As for the ports, these are almost the same. Both have two Type-C ports, one of them is Thunderbolt 4. Both have two USB Type-A ports at 5 gigabits per second. Both have HDMI 2.1, both have RJ45, but the RJ45 on Asus ROG in higher models, in more expensive models, supports 2.5 gigabits per second speed, but Asus TUF at the highest model doesn't support 2.5 gigabits. These exact models both supports 1 gigabits per second, which is okay. But if you want better connectivity, you can get more expensive models from Asus ROG. There is one difference in the port selection, that Asus TUF has one USB Type-A port on the right and one on the left. But Asus ROG has two USB Type-A on the right and the other ports are on the left. Because of that, the ports on Asus TUF on the left side of Asus TUF is a little bit jammed. But in Asus ROG, there is nothing like that. But there is a problem here. Why? Because Asus TUF has two USB-A ports on both sides. And Asus ROG has two USB Type-A ports on one side. Because of that, it can be a little uncomfortable for some people. But it is on your side. I can't decide which is better. So it's a tie on the port selection. About the overall design, I can say the Asus ROG is better because it has more gamery look, it is classy, it is flashy, and it feels more premium. And because of that, the design point will go to Asus ROG, but it is a little personal. I prefer Asus ROG in terms of design and body quality, but you may want to buy Asus TUF because you prefer this design. I personally prefer Asus ROG design, but what do you think? Which one is better? Tell us in the comments below. The display on both laptops are basically the same. Both have FHD Plus displays with 100% sRGB, less than 300 nits of brightness. It is a little too low for both laptops, and both of them have 165 Hz refresh rate, which is good for gamers, but I prefer a better screen for this price. Let's be honest, other brands at this price have better options for the customers. FHD Plus with almost 300 nits of brightness is not enough for this kind of laptops, and I don't like it, especially in Asus ROG. I know there is other variants and other models for the display, like 2.5K 165 Hz display, like 2.5K 240 Hz for Asus ROG. I know they exist, but why there is a model with this weak screen on these laptops? It is okay, it is an okay display. There is nothing wrong with it. The only problem is it is just enough, nothing better than enough, and enough is not enough for these kind of laptops. So the display score for these two laptops is a tie. Okay, let's talk about performance. As I said earlier, these two laptops have Intel Core i7-13650HX processor. It's a 14-core CPU, along with NVIDIA RTX 4060. But Asus TUF only supports 130 watts and Asus ROG supports 140 watts. The only difference I think between these two laptops on paper is the GPU wattage. And it is okay because 4060 can't even go higher than 120 watts. So anything above 120 watts is not gonna affect your gaming experience or your whole experience with your gaming laptop. So basically there should be no difference between these two laptops, but there is difference. Why? Because the cooling system on Asus ROG is a lot more advanced. It has liquid metal for heat dissipation of the CPU, and it is one of the best things about Asus ROGs in the last 3 years. The CPU can easily work without any problem and it won't overheat at all. And because of that, I prefer the Asus ROG for this section, because the cooling system on Asus ROG is a lot better. It has 3 fans, it has liquid metal on the CPU, everything about it is more advanced. And I think the $200 price difference is actually worth it. You will see in the benchmarks that Asus ROG will perform a lot better. As for the benchmark, we tested Cinebench R23, Cinebench 2024, Geekbench 6 and TimeSpy in both laptops to see how well they can perform. In Cinebench R23, we tested both laptops and Asus ROG performed 5 to 12% better in multi-core and even single-core compared to Asus TUF, which is good and reasonable because it is like the 10 to 15% price difference between these two laptops. In Cinebench 2024, the results are the same. We are looking at 5 to 12% better performance on the Asus ROG compared to Asus TUF. And on the GPU side, as you can see on the screen, the scores are basically the same. There is a little difference between these two, and the chart, as you can see, is based on multi-core score. We also tested Geekbench 6, and as you can see on the screenshots, the performance is okay, and I don't know how and why, but Asus TUF performed better in Geekbench 6. We also tested TimeSpy to see how well they can perform in 3D applications and games. And in TimeSpy, as we expected, we saw 10 to 15% better results on the Asus ROG compared to Asus TUF. We also tested Adobe Premiere in both laptops, and you're not gonna believe it, both laptops scored almost the same. Like, it was just a margin of error, I think. 4 minutes and 41 seconds in Asus TUF and 4 minutes and 40 seconds on Asus ROG. Which is funny to see because just 1 second difference is just margin of error. They are basically the same in Adobe applications. We also tested Adobe After Effects, and in this test too, Asus TUF gave us 4 minutes and 22 seconds, and Asus ROG gave us 4 minutes and 24 seconds. The difference is just margin of error again. For the benchmarks, I can say the S-score will go to Asus ROG, and for the content creation workloads, the S-score will go to both of them. It's a tie. We also tested some games in these laptops like Cyberpunk 2077, Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant, Apex Legends, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And in all these tests, as you can see on this screen, like Cyberpunk that we tested in preset Ray Tracing Ultra, preset Ray Tracing Ultra plus frame generation, preset Ultra, and our customized preset without any DLSS or FSR or any help from AI to see how well they can perform in raw performance. As you can see on the screen, the performance is almost the same. It's a little better in some scenarios in Asus stuff and a little better in some scenarios in Asus ROG. So, in conclusion, in Cyberpunk, I think we can say there is no much difference. But in Rainbow Six Siege, things was a little different. Why? Because Rainbow Six Siege is a CPU and GPU heavy game. It's relied on the CPU a little more than Cyberpunk. Because of that, the difference, especially in low quality, is a lot more than we expected, because they have the same CPU and GPU. But because the CPU on the Asus ROG has better cooling, we can see better performance in Rainbow Six Siege, especially in the lowest preset, which is insane. There is almost 20% difference in Rainbow Six Siege, which is interesting to see. We also tested Valorant, which is a CPU heavy game in both laptops, and as we expected, Valorant performed better in Asus ROG compared to Asus stuff, because it's a CPU heavy game and the CPU cooling is better on the Asus ROG. And the next game is Apex Legends. Apex Legends is a GPU heavy game almost, and Apex Legends performed better, a little better, on Ultra preset in the Asus stuff, which is interesting. But in the low preset, the scores are almost the same, but I can say the performance on the low quality is a little better on Asus ROG, just because of the CPU. And the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the FPS is almost the same. We ran benchmark on Shadow of the Tomb Raider and the score is almost the same, which is just interesting to see how well Asus stuff can keep up with Asus ROG in the games. For this section, I can say Asus stuff performed a lot better than we expected, but Asus ROG is the winner here. As for the speakers, they are almost the same, and Asus ROG has better quality, but it is not that different from Asus stuff. There is something I should note here, that Asus ROG in more expensive models has better speakers, and the 4060 model or 4050 model has these normal speakers, I can say. But the speakers on the 4070 or even 4080 models are a lot better than these two laptops. So the speaker score is a tie. So this is the webcam quality of Asus TUF F16 and Asus ROG G16. I think it is obvious which one is better, but it's a little overexposed. On the Asus ROG it is a better. It's a 1080p webcam compared to 720p webcam. And which one do you think is better? What do you think about the mic quality? Which one is better? Tell us in the comments below. As for the battery capacity is 90 watt-hour in both laptops, and as we expected, because we have the same CPU, because we have the same GPU, we have the same screen, and in conclusion, I can say, because of these things, the battery life is almost the same. They are identical. They both last around 5 to 6 hours. And They are not good both, so it's a tie. At the end, I can say Asus ROG was performed a lot better. Not a lot, performed better. But because Asus stuff cost $200 less than Asus ROG, if you are on a budget, you should buy Asus stuff. But if you are not on a budget and you can spare $200 more on a laptop, the Asus ROG just feels better and feels right to buy because it has better build quality, better cooling system for the CPU, and it's a better package compared to Asus stuff. And I think it's worth a $200 extra money to buy Asus ROG. What do you think about these two laptops? Tell us in the comments below. Which one do you choose? Asus stuff or Asus ROG? And also, if you have any experience of using these two laptops, tell us in the comments below and others can see your experience and choose what is the best for them. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.